So the nature of our conference was the future of testing. And today, through the whole, since 8 in the morning until 4 at night, we've been talking about today and tomorrow of technologies. You definitely, AI was part of this conversation one way or another. People mention it. Some people are already using it. Some people using it for like very long time. And some people are on the edge of innovation and development. And today I invited 3 people here. They are all different, but we're going to find out why they're here. And you probably know Artyom already, that he's one of the pioneers in Gen AI and test automation. And yes, this is not a hype for him. It was he was doing it for many years. And I want to introduce Rhea. So Rhea, who are you?
Sure. Hi everyone. So I am a senior software engineer at Microsoft. Worked on cloud services both on the IaaS and PaaS layer. A lot of experience in networking and a lot of passion in AI. The new org that I joined is called AI for Life Sciences. So we're doing a lot of creative work there to help the life sciences field.
And also Jeremiah. And Jeremiah was here helping us, but in reality, he's a big guy. And his focus is really on people, right? How AI will change our lives and how it will change our technologies and how we will adjust to that new technologies that are taking us by storm. So my first question is really, it's a panel, so I will give every panelist to give his opinion or her opinion. How quality is affected by introducing AI in our lives?
Super happy to be here. Thanks so much for organizing the conference. It's been great. Amazing that you pulled it together in such a short period of time. So just huge props to you for doing that. So some of the ways that I think that our field will change with AI is first, we're going to have to adapt to how we do testing. How do we make high quality software that has AI components? And in many cases, we can use AI, as some of the colleagues will discuss, to help us with automation, to help us come up with new test cases, think of new ways of testing. It'll be both a tool for the testing as well as something that we need to test. So it should be a lot of fun. I also think that there's a number of applications of AI that we're still developing, and so as we find new ways of solving the problems that we've had for a while, there'll be things that can go wrong. And so we'll have to adapt to that as well. So those are some of the things I think are facing us in the days to come.
Yeah, to add to that, in my team, it's not so much of a future. We've already started integrating GitHub Copilot to generate a lot of the framework of the test cases that we're writing. Since a lot of our development cycle is an inclusion of development, testing, and DevOps, the developer does all of this together. So it actually reduces a lot of time for a developer to have some of those boilerplate namespaces, classes, methods written for those test cases, and really speeds up developer velocity. So if you haven't yet tried out the GitHub Copilot integration with Visual Studio, it's a pretty cool thing to add on and speed up your velocity.
Yes, and AI will change everything.
So if you don't know who's Artyom, he's the CEO of TestTrigger. AI automation tool. So what are the risks that would be introduced? What kind of risk that we have to be prepared for and anticipate? What are the biases that using AI would we have to face with.
So I think when you think of ethics in AI, there's a lot of different pillars, and each country, government, company might sometimes have different values, but there are some common values across all these different platforms, like fairness, accountability, privacy, safety, security, and just kind of maintaining that AI is not going to be a competition with humans, but kind of a friend of humans, which is what a lot of people are worried about. So having a lot of the initial data that we're using to train a lot of these models has to go through that filtration process of being unbiased, being inclusive to different kinds of race and gender, and also being safe and secure to use. When the internet was released, or when the phone came out, previous inventions, nobody created with it assuming that it's not going to go into the hands of criminals or people who can do wrong. But what we can do here is build safeguards around the technology to make sure we can protect it as much as possible.
So some of the risks, I think, just to build on that good answer, some of the risks I think are risks that we've seen before, and we already have methodologies and practices to deal with them. So there are malicious people and malicious organizations that are trying to do bad things. We gave the example in one of the tasks of one of the talks of someone who kind of jury-rigged a automotive website to sell them a Chevy Tahoe 2024 for $1. Right? There are going to be people who are going to try to do bad things with the output of these systems. That has always been the case. People are going to try to screw things. And so we need to be aware that not everyone is acting in good faith. Second, many of these tools themselves are made up of component parts that we don't fully understand. So the training data, we might not know where all of it came from. It's a massive trove of information, and literally no human being has read every single sentence in there. And so there's just a bunch that is unknown, and there is bias in there that we probably aren't even as human beings aware of. And so another example is, asking, this is the obvious one flaw or mistake that Gemini made, is asking AI to show me a picture of someone in the Nazi army in 1943, and then being displayed a set of racially diverse folks who were clearly not in the German army in 1943. And so that was not a malicious activity. That was literally like the training data plus a couple of assumptions that a human being made produced this output that we probably couldn't have easily predicted. Right? So there's malice, but there's also an unexplained or hard to predict things that can come out. And then there's also the set of things that that we can kind of control, right? So we know that we need to handle requests at scale. We know that we need to test the different components individually and together. We had some great conversations today about how no automation is going to replace everything. So there's the risk of like, how do you actually test this stuff in a way that is it's so complex and non-deterministic that a human being would have a hard time coming up with all the ways of breaking it. But we can't just trust a system to test the system. I think that those are three of the big risks that we have to deal with. Of course, there are more.
I think what you need to think about AI and testing AI is what matters for you as a tester from AI perspective. Yes, there are tools, of course, like test trigger, but I think what's becoming more important is how do you test AI features of your applications, right? And there are basically there are tools to test the basic functionality, as I was describing. those tools, for example, are built in TestRigger. But another point is you would need to learn. So it's now completely new section, as you probably would need to learn security testing and what is OWASP is. So if you don't know, definitely Google it and learn. You have to test for OWASP top 10 at the minimum consistently. But there is now also such a thing as OWASP top 10 for AI-based applications or LLM-based applications. Google that and check OWASP website. They now already came out with top 10 issues that you have to test from security perspective on the application under test. And yes, you can automate that as well. Well, majority of it. The examples of those are like those malicious intents. The examples would be trying to steal IP, similar to what we get from SQL injection, whereas like LLM injection, where people are trying to steal the prompts and stuff like that. You would need to build it, first of all, make sure it's not happening. And second of all, after it's not happening, build a test so it's testing for it consistently every single time, because even sometimes minute changes as engineers are progressing in their prompts and specifications can actually undo whatever you tested yesterday. So it has to be retested and retested consistently. It's the same thing as just regular software. So there is more, right? So maybe for your application, you want to make sure the output results are not racial, because not all LLMs are built the same. Maybe folks in, for example, cloud are very much concerned about safety, but not so much Elon Musk. If your engineers are using his LLM, then maybe you need to make sure that the responses that you are generating for your audience are compliant with what you would expect to see, especially if you ask tricky questions. And again, like go ahead and ask like ChatGPT or something, what would be tricky questions in this situation, that you can get that kind of help. A point being is you want to make sure you test the security of your AI applications and the consistency and legitimacy of the output. And that would become a really big thing, as so almost everyone will be using AI in their applications. So this is what you need to brace yourself for and prepare to test and help your, you need to bring it even to your organization and help engineering leaders to realize that, hey, like you can't just do like whatever. So you need to make sure your stuff is safe, compliant, and so on and so forth in there, and you can introduce best practices in there.
And my next question, so generative AI is actually generates. It generates idea, it generates code, it generates content. So for people who are on the edge of innovation, where are we going to be in a few years? Just 3-year prediction.
From a prediction standpoint, so right now what we're seeing is we're in a very early stage of the technology, and we're building a lot of these models. We're getting the data that is needed to train those models. But what we've seen these days is a lot of integration of applications with Copilot, which is like, okay, my Word now has Copilot, Teams has Copilot, and then you can integrate it with other business applications as well to ask relevant questions. Harvey AI is a very good example of something in the legal field, which is really helpful. The future of copilots is actually something called the agentic framework, which is being worked upon as well, where it's no longer just going to be prompt-based, generative text content. It's going to be actually an agent who you can give a certain set of tasks, and they will have the IQ and EQ close enough to a human being to perform all these various set of tasks. Now, to note that there should be autonomy in these agents where we can't just give them a list and just let them go on their own. So that's where safeguarding agents with a set of rules is extremely important. But agentic framework is something that's becoming kind of the next wave of what AI is after copilots. And that can be used in things like writing an agent to automate your entire test framework. Or it can be even kind of writing the business logic of your code itself. Or it can be executing a certain set of steps in the software development lifecycle that maybe you don't have people to do. And it can be used in different industries. I'm talking more specific to my industry. In AI for life sciences, you can use it in ways where chemists, biologists can give the certain set of steps for an experiment to this agent, and the agent can perform all of these tasks and give you the results of that data with some level of accuracy, but also a level of intuition and emotional quotient which didn't exist in previous machines that we've built, like computers. So that's kind of where we think, at least in the industry, that is going to be the next wave in the AI space.
I think that's a really solid foundation. A couple of other thoughts to build on it. First, one of the things we mentioned earlier is the foundational models, the frontier models that we're using right now, they will be the worst that we ever use ever, right? The rate of change that is happening with the foundational models is just astounding. And so a lot of the challenges that right now are that stymie some of the models, we're going to get better and better and better certainly within years, likely within months. Some of the stuff we're seeing within weeks. So the first is the foundational models is going to continue to evolve in an astounding way. The second thing is, much of this is so new, we don't yet have the frameworks to write the code and to actually know how to test. What are the different parts of testing an AI system? We know some of them. They're similar to the regular testing we've been doing. Others, but others will have to invent, or will have to evolve, or have to merge together. And right now, Google does it in a certain way, and Microsoft does it in a certain way, and OpenAI does it in a certain way, Anthropic does it in a certain way. Whatever they're doing on Grok, they're doing it a certain way. Like there's so much innovation that's happening right now at the same time. There isn't a lot of the reflection, like, oh, this is how we do this. Like, oh, this is the standard. And so there will be some standardization that'll certainly help things, and there'll be fewer moving parts because people will kind of do things in a similar way. I think agentic, like orchestration, or the idea to string together different models or different parts of models in different ways, along with code that already exists, like being able to book a ticket for a flight, or make a hotel reservation, or buy a car, or rent a car. Like a lot of the workflows, like book me a trip to Paris, or figure out, like the Olympics are happening, what schedule should I follow? Like right now, you don't really want an AI to do that, because they're going to generate something for you, but that could be the Olympics for like 20 years ago, right? Because it's using archival data to make predictions about the future, and it's not always really good. It might hallucinate, it might make things up because it wants to please you. It's a pleasing agent. And so as we make progress on the agentic framework and being able to select the right model, or the right RAG, or the right code to do the right task, will be super helpful. And then lastly, I think that we've already been shocked at what has happened over the past year. And so in 3 years, I don't think we can even fully anticipate all of the ways, but certainly advances in new domains, like scientific was one of the ones that you mentioned, Rhea, academic, like life sciences. Like there's just a tremendous amount of geospatial information, like the impacts of climate change, the impacts of malaria or global disease spread, or how hurricanes are spreading through the ocean, or sea level rises. There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's plenty of raw data across, everything from ice cores to mosquito counting. Like there's a whole bunch of data that hasn't been brought into these models yet, but you can use the exact same generative process to reason over this information as you can over text or as you can over images, or video, right? So there's just so much new. It's hard to predict 3 years out. Like it's hard to predict 3 months out. Yeah.
Well, first of all, agentic frameworks already exist. An example of it is test trigger. You're welcome. So you tell it what to do and it will do it for you. This is exactly how it works, and this is actually a classical definition of agentic framework in there. And I feel like when you think about the impact of AI, you should brace yourself for a range of change. Like when you're talking about 3-year horizon, it is unpredictable. So let's talk about it probably will be somewhere in the middle, but you have to think about the extremes. The one extreme would be, hey, like in 3 years, AI is already on the level of AGI, robots are already there, they took over our jobs, and that's it. We all live on UBI and you don't have to do anything. This is one extreme. Another extreme is it's actually all bullshit. LLMs are never going to progress any much further. Maybe will be twice as good, but will still hallucinate as crazy, and scientists will mathematically prove that nothing you can do about it. So that's another extreme. You don't know where exactly it's going to go. We do know it will be better, and significantly better, but we don't know to which degree, and somewhere you should expect it to be somewhere between these two extremes. However, I would agree with the previous speakers, even with, of course, is AGI all over the place and the robots that took over, there's nothing you can do about that, but let's talk about another extreme, right? It did not progress significantly further within, let's say, 3 years. From LLM's perspective themselves, question is, would it still have impact? And I'm telling you, it will be gigantic impact, and everybody will already have built out agents already in everywhere. Look at Microsoft. Copilot is already all over the place. In 3 years, it will be on a completely next level. So you'll be talking to your phone and say, I want this and that. It will hallucinate, but the point is there will probably be a ways to address it. So these hallucinations. So if every time before doing stuff, there will be a pop-up saying, hey, is this what you actually want to do? And you'll be able to correct the steps and say, yeah, sure, go for it. Then this is a way to deal with, one of the ways to deal with hallucinations, or probably many other ways. But point being, being as bad as it is now or super great, it does not matter, because the technology will progress significantly and LLMs will be literally everywhere. It's just a question of how exactly you will be dealing with them. So and this is what we should be prepared for. So then you're thinking about, hey, how do I plan my career? What's going to happen, and so on and so forth. So you should think about, how do I deal in the world where LLMs is all over the place? How do I change my job? I don't think it will be like AGI and this all take over. I think it's probably be closer to less exciting scenario where like there will be still a lot of work on dealing with hallucinations all over the place. So we will be still humans, we will still work. You have to understand and realize what kind of work, but what will happen for sure is everyone will become significantly more productive because of the technology. Order of magnitude more productive. So because like even the Copilot right now, it is de facto Copilot 1.0, right? So then it will be 2.0, 3.0, and it will be more powerful, more powerful, more powerful. So they just think about that. So I would think that you just need to figure out where, like how to deal with this world and prepare, like learning, for example, with OWASP top 10 for LLMs and stuff like that, to how to deal with this and how to lead the right change in your organizations in order to help leaders in your organization understand how to deal with LLMs from QA perspective, how to test it, how to make sure it does the right thing, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. If we have a round of questions, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'm going to give you the mic. Oh, okay. Yeah, all right.
Any hands?
All right. Everybody's
have a
probably...
question
Yeah.
here.
You have a question?
Oh, yeah, I did have one question. Just in the, I guess in all the future potential scenarios, there is one where the LLMs do get better, but you kind of have this issue where there's only like 5-6 megacorps in the world that do have the ability to train and control LLMs, and now all the information that you can technically access for free on the internet is paywalled behind a paid model. And the open source models cannot compete because they don't have access to the rich contextual data sets that the big ones have. So what about that scenario?
So I think, first of all, that is a very likely thing. That's something we need to think about, right? Like it costs so much money in terms not only of knowledge, but dollars and electricity and cooling, and like it is so expensive to humanity and to Earth to build these things that only $1 trillion company or a country can afford to do that. So that is just true, right? And there are models for thinking through the tragedy of the commons, right? Like you see that in utilities, like electricity is something that is egregiously expensive to produce at scale. You can do decentralized solar, you can do other things, but right now, like the distribution of power is very lossy. It's hard to get it to the last mile, and so humanity has figured out how to distribute water, how to distribute electricity, how to do roads to rural places, right? And fundamentally, this is an area I believe that government does have a role to play, because like how do you allocate resources to everyone, not only the rich? Like that's first. But the second thing is I'm very positive when it comes to humanity and figuring stuff out, right? Like if the plutocrats try to control this resource and say you can only use this if you're worth $1 billion or $1 million up, that way anarchy lies. Like there have been revolutions over a lot less, especially in like today's economy. Like a lot of people are looking for jobs, a lot of people are looking for their next paycheck, and so it would be extremely short-sighted for the rich people to just say, well, we're only going to give this to other rich people, and also that's just bad business. Right? There's a huge, like you see it with search and Android, right? Like there are Android phones that cost $30 in any place you go on this earth. Like I challenge you to tell me a place on Earth that doesn't have some sort of, like Antarctica has smartphones, right? In 5G's of connectivity, especially with Starlink and right. And so I do believe that, like, just as models are getting better on device, And you can do a ton of things. You can identify flowers, and you can figure out what, how to translate from Chinese into English without connectivity, using only your the memory in the hard drive of your phone. I believe that people will figure out how to allocate some of these resources, and certainly it will be easier to give to the people who have more money, but that's a very small market, right? And they're going to have plenty of options. So why would they go to give their money all to Google? There's a bunch of others they can give it to. So the economy, the way that competition works will, I believe, predict that worst case scenario won't happen. And I think that does also raise an additional point, which is, how do we measure quality of things? Like in the past, if you wanted to become a doctor, you had to memorize organic chemistry, and you had to understand how does this tiny little part of my finger connect to this other tiny little part, and what happens if I move this thing in this way? And there's, this is true for law, this is true for academia. How do you get into a college? Well, you write an essay. Well, what does an essay represent? Well, it represents the fact that you're fluent in a language, that you can structure a thought, that you have, you can actually talk about the topic that you want to talk about. And now anyone can type in a prompt, and in seconds, for free, copilot.microsoft.com, or the equivalent on a bunch of other websites. You can have an application that'll get you in Harvard or Stanford or Columbia or HEC or Sorbonne. There's pick a school. So how do you assess a good college application? How do you assess a good lawyer? How do you assess a good doctor? How do you assess a good mechanic? You want to open a business? You can either pay a lawyer a bunch of money, or you can go to ChatGPT and spend an hour. And it's not there's not following a bunch of blue links and having to click on some ads. You get a really good answer, and you be like, hey, cite your sources, and with a working URL, click on it and see if it says what it's supposed to say. By the way, you should always do that, because it could hallucinate and make shit up. But it's just it's a fundamentally a stunning time to be living, and I think that we will figure out stuff like that.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that as well. So I think I'll split up your question into two parts. One is accessibility of the tool itself, and one is accessibility of the LLMs and the models. So from what we've seen of past inventions, it was actually very hard for the rest of the world to get immediate access to something new invented in a richer land, right? But today, any updates to ChatGPT are instantly available to anyone around the world that obviously has access to an internet connection and a device. So in that way, the technology is an equalizer. But I agree with you on the side of access to models. I don't think it's as much an AI problem as it is a monopoly problem. And the monopoly problem is something we've seen even before, and something that the government continuously is trying to put guardrails on and make sure power is not in the hands of a few companies or entities. So yeah, just wanted to add to that.
You don't have. All right. So thank you so much for, thank you, dear panelists, for sharing with us your ideas and thoughts. And there is a lot of thinking to everyone. Definitely, from my point of view, software testing becomes profession number one in this new world of unknown. Everybody will need to have a critical thinking. Everybody will need to be doing learning, exploring, experimenting, all of us. And thank you all for coming here. I think there is great future that we all be responsible for, is waiting for us. And with that, we have reception here, so please help yourself. And if you have more questions for the panelists, you can talk to them. And thank you all very much for coming and making this event something great.